It is the epitome of the term over-engineered. It is enough to make any JDM fanboy go absolutely wild, and it strikes fear in the hearts of Corvettes, Mustangs, and Challengers alike. The 2JZ is the engineering marvel that took the 90s and 2000s horsepower race by storm. But why is it that this engine is considered one of the greatest of all time? Well, today we're talking about why is the 2JZ so good. Run it. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Sean, and today we are talking about the legendary 2JZ. But before we jump right in, this is your reminder to hit that subscribe button if you have not already done so. I put out new car content every single week, and you'll want to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out. Before we can talk about the 2JZ engine, we need to explore the history of the Supra, and really the history of Toyota itself. After the conclusion of World War II, the country of Japan was in a rebuilding phase. Manufacturers were starting to rebuild their facilities, and Kiichiro Toyota was looking to improve the quality and reputation of Japanese manufacturers. He wanted Japan to be seen as a country that's capable of producing the highest quality, as opposed to just some cheap knockoffs. After all, the country of Japan places a high priority on honor and maintaining appearances. In the world of manufacturing, Toyota is known as being one of, if not the single best in terms of management policy and operational excellence. The premise of lean manufacturing was developed by Kiichiro Toyota, after all. That's just some of my engineering side coming out for you. Let's jump into the Celica. In the 1970s, the world was struck by a global phenomenon known as the oil crisis. This was a time when the price of regular gasoline skyrocketed upwards of 400%, and the gas-guzzling muscle cars of the past were starting to struggle in sales. At the same time, the smaller and more efficient Japanese four-cylinder models were becoming more and more popular. Along with models such as the Honda Civic and the Toyota Corolla, also known as the AE86, the Toyota Celica flashed onto the market in 1978. The Supra name actually started as a trim level of the Celica. The Celica Supra was introduced to the market with either a 2-liter or a 2.6-liter single overhead cam inline 6 engine that produced 110 and 123 horsepower respectively. In 1981, Toyota completely redesigned the Celica Supra with the second generation. Available with a 2-liter or a 2.8-liter inline 6, the Celica Supra was starting to redefine the term performance in both the Japanese and the North American markets. Americans were starting to like the idea of a small, lightweight sports car that you could drive with everyday reliability, but still have a good time driving around in the canyons. In 1986, the tie between the Celica and the Supra was cut, as the Supra became its own model. The Celica was converted to front-wheel drive to establish the Supra as the performance model that would pave the way for the future. The third generation Supra was originally available with the 7MGE inline 6, as well as the sought-after R154 5-speed manual. The 1JZ GTE wouldn't be introduced until 1990. As the predecessor of the 2J, the 1JZ was a 2.5-liter twin-turbo inline 6 that put out 276 horsepower and had the same R154 manual transmission. But the problem with the 1JZ was that America never got it. The third generation Supra was available in the US, but it never got the 1JZ. Just like all the cool things from Japan, like the Type R, the Skyline. Let's just continue. In 1993, we received the Holy Grail, the Mark IV Supra. The redesign showed that Toyota was moving towards a more serious, high-performance sports car with the introduction of two new engines, the 2JZ GE, as well as its twin-turbo brother, the 2JZ GTE. These new engines were paired with either a 4-speed automatic, which, let's be honest, nobody really wants, or the V160 Getrag manual 6-speed transmission, which to this day will still run you upwards of 10 grand if you're trying to get your hands on one. The turbo variant of the Mark IV would do 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds and had a stock quarter-mile time of 13.1 seconds, which even today is no slouch. And despite having dual airbags, traction control, bigger brakes, wheels, and tires, the Mark IV came in 200 pounds lighter than the Mark III. This helped propel the Mark IV to a top speed of 160 miles per hour. Now, at this time, there was a gentleman's agreement among Japanese car makers. Young enthusiasts were modifying their cars and causing havoc on the streets of Japan. The introduction of the twin-turbo Nissan 300ZX was actually the catalyst for this agreement. At the time, the 300ZX was one of the fastest cars available and could go toe-to-toe with exotic manufacturers such as Ferrari and Porsche. As a means of trying to keep the public streets safe, car manufacturers agreed to not make any car with more than 276 horsepower. This meant that most manufacturers were developing incredible engines with massive potential, but were detuning them so that they didn't exceed the 276 horsepower limit. But oftentimes, these engines were very easily tunable and could exceed that horsepower limit with ease. And thanks to these restrictions in Japan, the US finally got something cool in an uptuned version of the 2J that put out 320 horsepower and 315 foot-pounds. After 2002, the Supra disappeared and wouldn't be seen for another 17 years. In 2007, a new concept was introduced in the form of the FTHS. Although this concept had very little chance of actually being put into production, it was more of a way to hype up a new Toyota sports car. In 2013, the FT1 concept was released and the automotive world went wild. It wasn't yet clear whether this model would receive the Supra nameplate or if this was just the new generation of Toyota sports cars moving forward. Well, we found out in 2019 when the Mark V Supra debuted to very mixed emotions from the car community. A design that was similar to the FT1 concept, but just somehow didn't feel right. No manual transmission from the factory, and a collaboration with BMW that left JDM purists shaking their heads. The fact of the matter is that engine development is difficult and expensive. In this age of turbo 4-cylinders dominating the market, which manufacturer is best known for producing turbocharged, inline 6-cylinders for their sports cars? When Toyota was looking for a partner to make the new Supra, it had to be BMW. And if you ask me, it's not really such a bad thing. I mean, the interior is really nice, the engine makes a great sound, and it's not that difficult to make more power with just simple bolt-on mods. So in many ways, the Mark V is a proper follow-up to the Halo Mark IV. I know not everyone shares that feeling, but it is what it is, so we might as well accept it. But that's enough about the history. Let's talk about why is this engine so good. Because Toyota was so successful in production in the 80s and 90s, they were just overflowing with cash that they would throw straight back into research and development. With all this extra time and money, they ended up over-engineering their cars far beyond what they needed to actually sell them. In trying to create cars that would be reliable for multiple lifetimes, they ended up creating an engine that would be capable of producing 600 to 700 horsepower without replacing anything in the bottom end. The 2JZ features a cast iron engine block, which is heavy but also incredibly strong when compared to the light aluminum blocks of its competitors. Also, the bottom end features forged crankshaft rods and pistons, which means that you don't need to replace any of these parts when trying to get to that 500 to 600 horsepower goal. Although replacing the valves, lifters, and camshafts is a good idea when trying to reach these higher power numbers. Going to a larger single turbo simplifies the exhaust setup in addition to giving you more power and a wider power band than the stock sequential twins. These engines have been used in everything from championship winning Formula Drift teams to 6-second quarter-mile drag cars, so no matter what your goal is, the 2JZ can be the perfect option for you. If you can get your hands on one, that is. Most of the 2Js available in US model Supras are not for sale, as you can imagine, so really your best option is to pick one up from a Japanese importer such as JDM California or Japan Direct Motors. These engines are likely to be the VVTi spec pulled from the Toyota Aristo, as more of these engines were available from the more common Aristo models. However, because this engine was originally sold in the US, parts for these engines are much more readily available than their RB26 or even 13B counterparts. Parts for swapping this engine into your favorite chassis have been around for decades, and finding parts such as single turbo manifolds, camshafts and injectors, or even aftermarket tuning solutions can be found easily with a simple Google search. This means that with a few clicks, a week or two of waiting, and a strong bank account, you can get everything you need to build your 2JZ and drop it into your car. But that's going to wrap it up for this one, guys. Leave me a comment down below what you think about the 2JZ, the Mark V Supra, or what engine you guys want me to talk about next. I've already got a couple on the list, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss out. If you enjoyed this video, leave it a like down below. If you want to see more from me, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new, and we'll see you guys on the next one.